there's some sports that are fairly easy to pick up. I want to play tennis. Cool, I'm going to get a racket, tennis balls, some shoes, I'm going to go find a court. Hunting, it's just like, man, how do I even start on this? If you're hunting out in the weather and the elements, I'd recommend getting something that's going to be stainless steel or Cerakoted. Just won an award from NRA, the Golden Bullseye Women's Innovative Product of the Year. It's the second time it's won it in the last 3 years. I'm steady and there's no wind. Well, don't go translate that into freestanding with a 30-mile-an-hour crosswind. So I encourage hunters to practice in hunting type of scenarios. It's important to understand there's a difference between just shooting to shoot and shooting to hunt. This is Adam Weatherby, and you're listening to Living Country in the City.
Y'all ready for your dose of flyover state spirit? Straight from the concrete jungle? Well, put down your latte and pull on your boots. It's time for Living Country in the City.
All right, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Living Country in the City. Still here at the Western Hunting and Conversation Expo.
Yes, we're having a conversation.
That's what it is for me this trip, the Western Hunting and Conversation Expo. Before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to Sawyer Products for their continual support of the podcast. Would not be able to do this without their support. Make sure you check out their products, water filtration, sunscreen, and insect repellent at Sawyer.com. But I'm here hanging out in a booth with some of the most beautiful rifles I've ever seen in my life. And I have sitting with me the man himself, Adam Weatherby. Adam, thanks so much for taking the time hopping on the podcast with me.
Thanks for dropping by the booth and sitting down and having a conversation. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I always like to start out with maybe just a little bit of background about yourself, how you got started, what got you into hunting and the outdoors.
Sure. Well, for me, I guess it's somewhat synonymous with my business. So, obviously, my grandpa started this business in 1945 in Southern California, of all places, to start a gun business. But in the 40s, it was everybody shot and hunt. Didn't matter where you were. Where today, the city and the country are vastly different. Back then, they weren't quite as different. And so he set up. Really shop there in Southern California, like I said, in 1945. So I'm third generation. My dad took over the business, and so I grew up, obviously, with a lot of access to a lot of good hunting firearms and ammunition and opportunities. So I am a rare case in that I literally grew up into it.
So it went from humble beginnings to a worldwide recognizable name for, synonymous with just amazing quality hunting rifles, and a lot of people getting into hunting probably should not be doing what I did and picking up a bow and trying to do a DIY archery hunt on their first hunt.
Right.
And so I feel like a rifle is an incredible tool for new hunters to use. It takes a lot of things out of the equation that you have to stress about with bow hunting, and if somebody is looking into picking up a first hunting rifle, what are some of the things that somebody wants to look for when they're selecting a rifle?
Yeah, you bet. And it depends too. I think if you didn't grow up around firearms, it's important to make sure that first and foremost, hunter safety, firearm safety, that those things are taken care of first and foremost, so that when you do go pick up a weapon that's you're intending to kill an animal with, that you don't harm anything else unintended. So disclaimer there that's always a good idea, to be able to do. As far as a first rifle, it's always good to find, local people that you can connect with at, maybe a local gun shop or whoever it might be, maybe local hunters or whatever, that can help, get you, involved and kind of into the space of firearms and, what's most needed and those different things. You want something that fits you right. Caliber-wise, there's so many things, and so somebody that's new to firearms, there's just a world of caliber options, cartridge options out there for them. A lot of it's game dependent, depending on, how large and small of game. Just like with any hobby, everybody wants to, I just want one good all-around one, but like with any hobby, you start with one and it typically grows and you realize, okay, that's my elk gun and that's my whitetail gun, and you have different guns designed for different things.
My 30-06 is not necessarily maybe the best choice for squirrel.
Right, exactly. So it really depends. You kind of got to define what your purpose is going to be for it. So, for instance, if you're going to be doing tree stand hunting, you're not going to care much about weight. If you're just in a blind or whatever, weight's not a big deal. If you're going to be doing a lot of backcountry hunting and a lot of hiking, then weight's going to be a big factor for you. You might want a larger Weatherby Magnum if where you're going to be hunting. You might want to push several hundred yards. If most of your shots are going to be within 100 yards, that doesn't matter. So a lot of it is real dependent upon the terrain you're going to be in, the game you're hunting, and all those sorts of things. So it is somewhat dependent, just I guess like with any hobby or activity or anything that you pick up. But
absolutely. So someone decides, okay, whatever the animal is, they come in. What recommendations do you have otherwise for someone that's looking to plan their hunt? They, maybe they picked their first animal, whether they want to go on a hog hunt or something like that. What are some other considerations going into that you think people should always make sure to keep in mind?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it is the land you're going to be hunting on. If it's private and public, and knowing boundaries or those sorts of things. If it's a DIY, if it's a guided hunt, obviously you can rely on your guide to even though you're responsible, ultimately you can depend a lot upon that. But, from scouting to picking that out, I mean, Onyx Maps I'm a big fan of. We're an online platform, in an app platform like that. I use Onyx a lot to tell me where I'm at. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's a great app. You can put on your phone, and GPS-wise, it's telling you private or public, BLM, state, national forest. Heck, it even tells you the owners of the property, and you can look them up and ask for permission.
Yep.
So it's always important to know, where you're hunting, season dates, all those different things, I think, before you go in. And then, for gear, it's just so dependent upon where you're at. There's a lot of gear outside of your firearm, as you well know. So, I mean, optics are a huge part, too, when you're firearm hunting, what's on top of it. So it's important to have a good rifle, but if you can't see your target appropriately and know how your gun's shooting, the trajectory of it, how that's lining up with your optics. There's just so many different things to take into consideration. So that's why it's good. I think one of the best things is to find somebody who you can go with, who can mentor you, who can instruct you, who can walk you through those things. Because I often think you see that, that the numbers of hunters are declining as far as national statistics of hunting licenses sold. But a big part of that is we need to get out. Those of us that are active hunters, we need to get out there and be bringing people into it and find people that are showing interest and walk them along in it. There's some sports that are fairly easy to pick up. I want to play tennis. Cool, I'm going to get a racket, tennis balls, some shoes, and I'm going to go find a court. Mm-hmm. It's fairly easy, and hit it back and forth over the net. Hunting, I mean, when you're talking licenses and tags and draws and all those kind of things, to how do you field dress an animal, to what gun do I use, how do I mount it up, what about rings and bases, scope, spotting scope, range finders. It's just like, man, how do I even start on this? So it's really important, I think, that we as hunters go out there and really invest in kind of the next generation of hunters.
So what do you see that's being done correctly, maybe to that regard, like either people or groups that you really see that are taking that initiative to really build up this next generation of hunters?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of, I think what is exciting is there are some different groups, I think, that are out there. A lot of conservation groups, like I'm on the board for the Mule Deer Foundation, which co-hosts this show. Mm-hmm. And part of that mission is to educate. And so there's actually the Muley program, the booth's right behind us over there. That's a little bit of what that's intended to do. So a lot of your big conservation groups out there are doing a lot of education, more local, hunter safety type of things that are there. I mean, NRA has programs. A lot of people out there are having a lot of programs. But ultimately, I think it's really on us, like I said, as hunters. I think organically it's like, programs are cool. But I think ultimately it's like, okay, I'm an avid hunter. When people express an interest in hunting, how do I take them to that next step, right? Mm-hmm. My wife's done that quite a bit because she didn't grow up in a hunting family. She grew up in Southern California, didn't grow up hunting at all, furthest thing from it. Never shot a gun. She married into the Weatherby family. So she had no choice. And so she's an avid hunter now. We have a whole women's line, actually. The Camilla rifle is named after my grandma, and she's headed up a lot of the promotion of that. And so she has a real passion to see new women get out there and do that. And so I got a friend here at the show, Candy Yao, and she puts on a women's hunting camp for ladies. And it's awesome. Like, my wife and daughter went a couple of years ago, and what Candy's doing with that is awesome because you get these women that come out, There's not these men intimidating them, saying, "No, you hold it this way. Why'd you miss?" And there's everything from shooting classes to literally they will get from somebody out there. They'll get an elk carcass and literally teach them how to field dress it. And so those sorts of things where you come away, because I think people need confidence in order to get out there.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that, because I've noticed. I mentioned, I used to teach shooting clinics, precision distance shooting clinics, and we would have whole varieties of people coming out. I mean, like from 6-year-olds to dudes in their mid-30s that have been in the military their whole life. And, we got a lot of guys that would bring in their girlfriends. They're like, I want to get my girl to shoot. That's the perfect way to introduce her.
Right.
It's great until they're shooting next to each other.
Yeah.
Because we get a lot of, like, super chesty dudes that are like, I'm just here so my girlfriend can learn how. I already know how to shoot. And they don't want to listen.
Right.
And so
women are usually the best students.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. And so we'd notice, like, everything's going great until she starts out shooting him.
Yeah.
And then when they'll be shooting next to each other, and then he'll start picking at her, being like, "Oh no, you're doing this wrong," and then her shooting starts going down. Right. So we'll separate them, and then all of a sudden she's just keyholing shots.
Yeah.
And he's still trying to figure it out because he hasn't listened to a word we've said the entire weekend.
Right.
It's a funny thing I've noticed with that, and I think it's important sometimes for probably the ladies to get away from the guys and have their own time. And but no, it's it's an interesting thing, because sometimes it's not just bringing them into hunting too. Depending on the person, you're maybe introducing them to firearms, like you said with your wife. You may be introducing them to firearms for the first time, or archery. It's not just overcoming this one piece. There's a lot of, I don't want to call them hurdles, but there's a lot of challenges sometimes to introducing a new person to hunting, and we've got to find interesting ways to overcome those for sure.
Absolutely, I agree.
So tell me a little bit about the rifles themselves. Like, what do we have around us as far as maybe? Say somebody wants to go on their first deer hunt. They want to go on like a mule deer hunt. And they're coming to you and saying, okay, I want to do this mule deer hunt. It's not, we're not carrying everything. We're not hiking in with everything on our backs or anything, but, we're going to do a little hiking, so I don't want it to be too heavy. How would you, what process would you go through with them as far as picking a rifle?
Yeah, I think, we have, we have several different lines, and everywhere from a $500 rifle up to a, multi-$1,000 rifle. So it's understand your budget. Once you have your budget established, I think then it's really, your caliber is going to be pretty important. Obviously, with mule deer, there's going to be a whole lot of, deer. There's 10 great options. There's a whole lot of those. Of what's good. We have our own Weatherby Magnum calibers. They're faster. They push out a little bit further. They shoot flatter, so there's less holdover that needs to be done or dialing in of your scope because it does shoot flatter. 257 Weatherby mag is kind of our best deer round that we have. So I'd push people to that. The 240 Weatherby mag could be great, and then we have a bunch of standard cartridges. A 243 or a 270 or a 6.5 Creedmoor. There's a lot of good deer rounds, but it's finding out your cartridge. Then, like I said, I think weight is an issue. If you're looking for something ultra lightweight, we have some rifles that are going to have more fluted barrels, lighter stocks with carbon fiber in them, and those things. That's going to be great for. We got a calling contest or something over here. So I think it's deciding really on the weight factor. So you can get some of our rifles are say 5.5, 5 3/4 pounds up through 8.5 to 9 pounds. So deciding kind of that factor. Durability wise, some of ours are going to be more standard like blued metal. Some of them are going to be more Cerakoted, with colors and things that are, or stainless steel that are going to have that. So is that important to you? So if you're hunting out in the weather and the elements, I'd recommend getting something that's going to be stainless steel or Cerakoted. So that's kind of important. Along with that, we got wood stocks versus, say, fiberglass stocks. Wood's pretty, but people don't like to ding them up as much. So 80+% of the guns we sell are more fiberglass or synthetic type of stocks, composite things, just because of the durability factor and worrying about get it wet and the wood swelling and all those sorts of things. So, as you kind of go down it, there's a myriad of things. If you go to weatherby.com, you'll you can spend a couple hours on there, looking at the different type of models, that we have and that's available. So
that's awesome. And am I crazy? Do you guys have a customizer on the site?
There is a custom configurator on there too, so you can build something from the ground up.
I remember. I think I ended up playing with that for an hour one time.
But there are a lot of models even before you get to that, just standard models like you can see around the booth here. We basically have two main actions: our Vanguard action and our Mark V action. Our Vanguard is more of our entry to mid level, and the Mark V picks up and kind of takes it into that upper end. But yeah, so there's a lot of different options. That's for sure. Like I said. If you're a woman and you're listening, we have our Camilla line. We have about 5 different models now in the Camilla. Just won an award from NRA, the Golden Bullseye Women's Innovative Product of the Year. It's the second time it's won it in the last 3 years. So we're really gaining a lot of traction with our women's rifle because there are a lot of women that are coming in. And like with everything else, it's like women have things that are designed specifically for them, their clothes or their shoes or whatever. And it's like all of a sudden you get your dad's or boyfriend's or husband's or brother's gun and then expected to use it. And so we designed it going, okay, what should a woman's rifle ideally be? Not just, as we say, shrink it and pink it, which means cut off the back of the stock and spray paint it, some pink on it and call it a women's gun. It's like, no, let's design it from the ground up so that, we've accommodated for, a thinner pistol grip for their, smaller hands. The way that the cheek piece is on the stock, because their necks are typically a little bit longer, slimmer forearm, because of their finger length, the distance between the pistol grip to the trigger. So all those things have kind of been gone through because we want to design it specifically for them. So,
well, and it's, not even just the women's rifle, but this is the kind of thought you put into all the rifles in your line, and it's impressive to hear that. I've built little custom target rifles here and there for myself, and all of that stuff is so incredibly important when you're shooting. When you're talking, 100, 200, 300, 400, however far out you're shooting.
Right.
Suddenly squeezing, not following through on your shot, and all these little things that you end up doing more often when you have a rifle that's not doesn't fit you correctly.
Sure.
That suddenly translates, the width of a hair is, inches down the line.
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
It's super important. As far as picking out a rifle, is it the kind of thing where you would recommend somebody holds them, tries them?
I would, but I think, and I think because of, it's you can buy guns online, but it's got to be shipped to an FFL holder anyways, so it's not going directly to your door, because of ATF regulations. So it is good to be able to go into a gun shop, be able to hold some different things, talk to a local expert about it a little bit. Yeah.
Now, as far as if someone want to order a Weatherby online, that gets shipped to an FFL, is it? How does that work?
So mainly we send people, unless it's a custom gun, we use dealers, that are out there. So whether it be, right here, Sportsman's Warehouse in town, a store like that, to, your local gun shop or whatever, they're going to be able to accommodate you. Now, a lot of times, they're not going to have, because we got so many models, they're not going to stock them all. So a lot of times it is going to be a special order, and then you just have to order it, and then they call us up. But again, we sell to the dealers because of, the whole FFL issue and all that stuff. So, yeah.
So just in general, somebody that's looking to start shooting, whether or not they're hunting. Hunting obviously adds another dimension to it, but somebody's what are some other things to keep in mind for somebody that does want to get behind a rifle, some important considerations?
There's a difference. I think it's important to understand there's a difference between just shooting to shoot and shooting to hunt. What I mean by that is there's a lot of guys that go down to the range and they rest their rifle on a bench, and it's at 100 yards, or even they shoot steel, and there's just a lot of controlled elements. You got sandbags or a sled, so they call it I've never shot an animal off a shooting bench. And so there's a lot of different factors to consider. I really recommend to people to do hunting scenario type of shooting. And so, in other words, like for me, and then what I do is I come up with limits even on yardages based upon my shooting position. So all in the field, I'll always shoot best prone, whether it's with a bipod on the front or over a pack. And if I'm prone, I know my yardage distance that I feel comfortable with. Next to that, sometimes I'll have shooting sticks, like a tripod or bipod, bog pod or a Spartan carbon fiber, shooting sticks, whatever they are. And so I'll sit down and do that. And so I'll kind of know my distances off of shooting sticks. I'll know my distances off of maybe resting it on a log, and then standing sticks, and then freestanding. And with that, my distance gets closer and closer in, depending on how I'm shooting, and really simulating that. So somebody might go down and be able to consistently hit a steel gong that's, say, a pie plate size, the size of an animal's vitals, at 300 yards on a bench. They get out in the field, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, man, I'm just sitting on my knees. I don't have any shooting sticks. And at 300 yards, especially when you throw in buck fever or whatever with it, your crosshairs are all over that animal. You can't even hold on the animal, let alone the vitals. And then you'll pull the trigger and either miss or injure an animal. And so it's very important that you understand, I think, your limits and do hunting type of scenario practice. Now, different ranges are going to have different rules on if you can do that or not. And it might be going out to somebody's ranch or doing those things if the range won't let you, say, shoot prone or do those different things. But I tend to practice more in those scenarios than I do from a bench. The only reason I really use a bench is to understand the accuracy of my rifle and to sight it in, and to just practice squeezing and so forth the trigger. But beyond that, I really don't just shoot off the bench, because primarily if I'm shooting to practice hunting, then I'm going to be preparing for how I'm going to go out there and harvest that animal, and then have my equipment accordingly. And I even choose then my distance, not only on those things, on your rest, but also wind and those various factors. So you might go, okay, I'm at the range, I'm on a bench rest, I'm steady, and there's no wind. Well, don't go translate that into freestanding with a 30-mile-an-hour crosswind. So you got to kind of know those limits and get out there and really practice with it. So I encourage hunters to practice in hunting type of scenarios, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, and we... I think people talk about that a lot with bow hunting, but not enough with rifles.
Right.
Because we've got all the events. Train to Hunt, Alpha Bow Hunting Challenge, this, that, and the other.
Right.
Where people do focus a lot on okay, I'm gonna run up this thing carrying this heavy pack and do these things to get my heart rate up and this and that. But obviously it's probably best that we're not running with rifles too in general. But I mean. It's that mindset of, I don't think people, like you said, people tend to be like, okay, I'm on a bench with sandbags, this and that, and I can keyhole at 800 yards, no problem.
Right.
But then suddenly, when you just ran up a hill to get a viewpoint on that bull or that buck, you're pressing up against a tree to kind of steady yourself while you're standing, and and then you wonder why you went way in front of him and spooked him.
Right. And it's really understanding your ballistics too when you shoot, so that you ahead of time what your bullet drop's going to be and at what distance and what you're sighted in for, and really understanding that, because there's nothing worse than kind of guessing and okay, I'm going to kind of aim a little higher or a little lower. You want to know what that is ahead of time, and so it's also really practicing up on that and at different distances. Now, obviously, there's 100 different ways, some from your scope reticles, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But whatever your system is, to understand your system and be confident in that system is really important.
Are there any good resources out there that you would recommend as far as? Because I know, like you said, there's lots of different ways people go about it. Some people adjust scopes. Some people have multiple different reticles and sighting differences. Some people hold up and I know, whatever. I know I'm going to have I'm going to be an inch and a half high at 100 yards if I'm sighted into it. Whatever that happens to be. How does somebody go about learning that? Are there good resources out there, really, other than
just a good question. I know there are good resources out there, and there's a lot of different systems, and different people believe in their different systems. And I'd say, hey, whatever works for you. I don't think there's one right or one wrong. And so, I mean, I've used several different types of systems, in order to do that. I would say initially, if they're real early on in hunting, what's best is probably to just really kind of have a close range and just not shoot beyond that. So in other words, for majority of caliber, say if it's 200 yards as a range, you're kind of aiming dead on with any sort of modern decent cartridge, you know?
Yeah.
And just kind of practice it on that, and then start to extend your range, that you can shoot, if that makes sense. So all the way up to there's courses out there you can take. There's long range courses, rifle sighting in courses. We have a guy just north of here, Mark and Scott Thompson. They do a thing called Thompson Long Range, and they exclusively use our Weatherby Mark Vs in some of our Weatherby cartridges. And they have a whole Loophole does a custom reticle for them, and they mount it up and do a whole course over a couple days. That basically you're trained to just shoot out to 1,000 within 2 days, a rifle right out of the box, a scope right out of the box, and they do a whole system. You come away with that with a lot of confidence, and they don't just do the shooting, but they teach you the whys behind it all and do a phenomenal job at that. It's Thompson Long Range. You can Google them. They actually have a holdover reticle, so they have, with some of our most popular cartridges, Weatherby cartridges, they actually have where you zero it in for 3, and then at 400, it's this dash. At 500, I mean, they just do a real simple holdover reticle that Loophole works with them on. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of different types of systems and shooting schools and everything you can be a part of.
No, I think that's super important. It's so funny. Like, I mean, I remember how I used to sight in my scopes before I used to take and teach this class. You know, I used to do it the little cheater way where you sit and you lock it in, lock it into something, and you just click it over until it moves to where the bullet is.
Right.
And you know what? You may decide that you're like, you know what? I can just do it quicker if I do it that way. But at least now you know.
Yeah.
And you know other ways to do it because that's not going to work in every situation.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So anything new and exciting we can expect to see from Weatherby coming up this year?
Yeah, we just have been moving this year from California to Wyoming, and so that's been real big. I moved there this last year, and we're right in the middle of moving our factory there right now. So we're hiring a new team and set up in a brand new factory in Wyoming. Sitting on this table is our Wyoming commemorative rifle that we're making for some of our first serial numbers. So
nice.
Yeah, I can't really give you announcements ahead of time, but we do. We have some both in shotguns and rifles and ammo. We have some new things coming out in the hunting space. So yeah, be sure to just check weatherby.com and there'll be some pretty cool things that are out there. In the past few months, we've introduced some more in the Camilla line. This last year, we got a carbon fiber barrel now. Working with some different camouflage companies for just some different rifles. So kind of a number of just new things kind of update the line. And then this year, we're going to have a few big introductions. So
very exciting. So yeah. So you personally, what do you have going on this year?
Hunt-wise, you mean?
Hunt-wise, yeah. What do we have coming up?
Sure. I'm actually in April. I'm going to be heading to the Southern Hemisphere and doing a New Zealand public land tar hunt.
Nice.
So really looking forward to that. So kind of a backcountry hunt type of deal down there. This fall, I'll be doing a lot of just general season area elk and deer and antelope hunting in Wyoming. Now that I'll be a resident this next fall because it takes 12 months to get there. So I'll be doing a lot of that and then a few other things in the cooker. But yeah, those are kind of the primary things so far. So. Yeah. That's
my thing with moving now is I keep trying to decide when I'm gonna make a move and I'd like to be out in Montana. I keep looking. I'm like, okay, I definitely have to be at least 6 months back or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think Montana might be 6 months. Don't hold me to that. But Wyoming's 12.
Jeez,
so
man, that's rough.
It's a bummer.
I was going back and forth. I almost ended up in Wyoming for a while.
It's a great place to be. Well, you could still end up there. There's plenty of room, and there's not a lot of people. So
they've got land out there.
There's a little bit of land and a lot of antelope.
Oh man, I've been putting in. I was putting in. I was trying to decide if I was going to put in for the draw this year or just buy points, and I ended up just deciding on buying points because I didn't have the time to really research. And I'm still pretty on the low end of things. Mm-hmm. But I'm building up, and I think next year I should have enough to get at least a fun antelope hunt, something a little action packed. And
good.
After going with my buddy Mason down in Arizona and helping him chase antelope with a bow, I've got a lot more work to do before I'm ready to do that.
Yeah.
That was a struggle.
It's hard. They're fast. Second fastest mammal on Earth next to the cheetah.
It's crazy thinking about that. I mean, you wouldn't expect it just like...
It's crazy. They're super fast. They don't call them speed goats for nothing.
Exactly. So, fast food.
Yep.
The definition of it.
Yep.
But,
cool.
So say somebody came up to you, here at the expo, whatever, and said, all this stuff's really interesting. I want to shoot, I want to hunt, but, I didn't grow up in a family that hunts. Like, I have no background in it. I don't even know where to start, where to go. I feel intimidated by all this. What kind of advice or encouragement would you give that person?
Yeah, I'd just say stick with it. You'll probably go out there and not kill stuff for a while, but just persistence and perseverance, and just finding the right people to just ask, hey, take me out. Let's go do this. Help me, mentor me, teach me, and allow for people. There's a lot of people out there that really want to help people through it, and then just don't give up. I
think that's important, too, because there's amazing people. I swear some of the best people in the world are hunters.
Yeah.
As far as my opinion, the most generous people out there. And but there are in this group people that, you're just not going to vibe with.
Right.
And like you said, that persistence, not just in going out and putting yourself on hunts,
right,
but even the persistence in just trying to find a community of hunters that you vibe with or whatever it is. 'Cause
I agree.
You're not going to get along with everyone. Drives me nuts that I don't get along with everyone because I like everyone. But, but you're not going to get along with everyone, and that's neither of your fault. But so you got to be persistent in chasing people, because it's a rare person that's going to come seek you out to take you hunting. It's on you to find yourself and make a way to do it, I think.
Yep, I agree.
So if people wanted to find Weatherby rifles on the interwebs?
Yeah, weatherby.com. Be a good place to head. So, go to weatherby.com. We got links off there and links to your, you can type in a zip code and get your local dealer, on there and all that kind of stuff. Watch films on there, all that.
Perfect.
So, they could check it out. Or after June, our grand opening will be open there in Sheridan, Wyoming. So if you're ever driving through Sheridan, Wyoming, right next to the Montana border, then be sure to stop by. We'll have a visitor center and showroom, and you can check out all our current lineup will be there. So you can kind of check us out, too, as you come by. So
there we go. On socials?
Yep. Probably Weatherby Inc., I think, on
Weatherby.
most of those, INC.
I'm pretty sure that sounds familiar.
I think so. I don't know. I have a marketing department. They do all that fancy stuff.
Well, and if folks wanted to find you online, where
I'm
they
just
looking?
Adam Weatherby, all one word. You can follow my public profile on Facebook that way, or Instagram is both Adam Weatherby. So you can look me up. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It was good. I'm going to have to wander around a little bit, check out
it's a fun show.
Some
it's
more
a fun
of the
show.
rifles.
Yeah, if you can ever come to something like this, too.
Oh, yeah.
The Western Hunting Conservation Expo, or other exhibits and things, you can come and go to all sorts of gun manufacturers or whatever and packs, and you can try stuff on. You can talk to outfitters and literally just come for a couple days and soak it up. So for a new person, it's a bit overwhelming, but it's also another good opportunity to come to something like this.
Well, and that's one of the things. It's like coming from the city is like, I can maybe go find a Bass Pro an hour drive away, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's tough when you can't always find those places to try these boots, try these packs, and all of that. So it's nice to come out to this. It may be a little bit drive or flight investment, but it's well worth it.
And you meet cool people.
And honestly, you probably get enough discounts at places like this from most of these places are running 10% off that you'll pay for your flight and the gear. So, thanks again for hopping on. I really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me. It was an honor.
All right, y'all, that'll do it for episode 97 of Living Country in the City. A big thank you to Adam for taking the time out of his day during a very busy expo to talk with me. Make sure y'all check out the show notes page at livingcountryinthecity.com/97. Get links to everything we talked about today's episode. But until next time, keep it country, y'all.
Thank y'all for listening to Living Country in the City. Get show notes and check out the blog, product reviews, events, and more at livingcountryinthecity.com.